The film starts with a woman named Catherine remembering her oldest son, Nicky, who was killed in a terrible car accident when he was 16 years old. Catherine has never forgotten her son's passing and won't even let her younger son, Brady, visit Nicky's room. And because of this, Brady feels very bad. On the other hand, we see a teacher named Walt, who got approached by a student named Sherry for assistance with a class. It is only then that we learn from their statements that Sherry found attraction in Walt and that Walt likes her also. Additionally, we learn that Sherry works as a weather reporter for a news channel. In the following scene, we witness a boy named Jordy who is incarcerated after being sentenced for auto theft. After a few days, his punishment is over and he is released from the prison. Outside the prison, Jordy sees his father Carl, who arrives to take him home. Further, we come to know that from their talks that Jordy does not get along with Carl, and both the father and sons keep fighting. Walt, on the other hand, finds a newspaper cutting of Catherine's son's accident in his house, which he keeps with him now. In the next scene of the movie, we see Jordy at his house, where Carl gives him a week's time and told him to get a job in this week, or else he will throw him out of the house. Jordy's stepmother, Elise, tries to be friendly with Jordy after Carl leaves for the work. Jordy didn't like his stepmother at all, because he thought that Elise was only with his dad for money. So Jordy doesn't talk to Elise well and leaves. Thus, Walt comes to visit his younger brother, Dennis. Here we can understand by the way Dennis talks that his mental condition is bad, and he has not come out of his apartment since last 2 years. Dennis is depressed. After that, we see Walt talking with Carl, who is actually a psychiatrist. Walt felt that he had fallen into depression and came to Walt for therapy. Walt then explains the reason for his depression, telling Walt that one night he was driving a very drunk and that his younger brother Dennis was in the car with him. Because he was inebriated, he was not paying attention to the road, and he had an accident with another car in which Catherine's son, Nicky, was killed. Shortly after, he saw someone with Kate wearing a basketball player's t-shirt. Just after hearing the full story, Carl understands that his own son was the basketball player. Meanwhile, Catherine visits her son's grave every day to lay flowers, and when no one else is home, she usually goes to his room and cries. In the meantime, Jordy applies for a job delivering pizza. The owner of the business did not want to give it to him because Jordy had a criminal record in the past, but Jordy forced him to accept the job. That evening, Walt is watching the weather report on TV when his wife approaches him. Walt rejects her because he was too busy watching Sherry on TV, and his wife becomes enraged and departs. One day when Jordy is pleasing himself, Elise walks into his room. Jordy gets embarrassed and he goes outside and sits in the park. Just then, a girl named Melissa comes and sits beside him. Melissa is a good friend of Jordy. Melissa explains to him that he should talk to Catherine, then Melissa invites him to the party. That evening, Walt's wife Abby leaves him and goes to her sister's home because he doesn't pay any attention to her. The next day, after college, Walt invites Sherry home and gets intimate with her. Sherry was also taking full advantage of Walt, as Walt used to give her good marks in exams. The following morning, as Alice was styling her hair in front of the mirror without clothes on, Jordy happened to walk by. Upon noticing him, Alice asked him, "What are you doing here?" He moved closer to her and began to seduce her. Alice seemed to enjoy it as well. Eventually, they became intimate, and just as soon as Carl got home, he heard his voice. As Carl approaches the bathroom, Jordy hides there. She talks to him, invites him to the bed, and takes advantage of the chance to get close to him. After this, Jordy departs the area. Melissa once visits the store where Jordy works, Kay. She asks him why he didn't come to her party that day, majority making excuse that he was busy that day. Melissa asks Jordy to meet her in the evening, and she leaves. After the night out, Melissa comes to drop Jordy home. Being late at night, Jordy invites Melissa to his house. While talking, both of them start kissing each other. Just then, Allies comes there and asks Jordy about Melissa. Melissa says that she is Jordy's school friend. Allies leaves feeling angry, after which Jordy also tells Melissa to go home. Walt discovers one day that Dennis used to talk to a girl named Sylvie, and in an effort to improve Dennis's health, he invites her to visit Dennis at his apartment. Dennis screams because he hasn't seen anyone but Walt for the past 2 years. Knowing Dennis's predicament, Sylvie speaks with him and tries to make him feel better. On the other side, Walt was also relieved to see Dennis getting better. Elise became upset with Geordie because he was spending too much time with Melissa. The following day, Geordie's manager at the business where he works orders him to work. After a lengthy period of dissatisfaction, Geordie quits his work in anger, and as soon as he gets home, Elise wants to talk to him about Melissa and his relation, but Geordie doesn't want to talk to her, and he goes off with Melissa. At night, Geordie is thinking about Nikki, and then he calls Catherine. Catherine pays him a visit the following day. Geordie informs her that he was also with Nikki in the car that he had stolen. He claims that he had the idea to steal the car, and in a hurry the car got into an accident, but nobody realized that Walt was at fault. After returning home, Catherine burns everything associated with Nikki, realizing that she would never move on. She also apologizes to her second son, Brady, asking him to do as he pleases before she decides to go on vacation with him. While Geordie returns home and begins talking to allies about their relationship, Carl arrives and listens to them, learning about allies and Geordie's affair. Carl then begins beating Geordie, and Geordie also begins beating him in anger. Meanwhile, Dennis also leaves his apartment after 2 years because he has a date with Sylvie Walt. Walt also realizes his mistake and goes to apologize to Catherine. Catherine tells him that she already knew that he is the one who hits Nikki's car in which he died. After that, Brady departs from Catherine. Geordie beats Carl badly, so Allies takes him to the hospital. On the other hand, Dennis was also happy with a date. Sylvie Walt is also happy to see him. And Geordie also goes to Melissa.